Hello, church. It's so good to be with you this morning. But in a true disclaimer, I have to tell you, I'm not overly excited about Jesus' teaching for us today. Honestly, Jesus gets us to that place, where he has been talking about the fact that he has not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law, which in other words, he's kind of taking the 10 commandments that we find in Exodus 20, and he's recapturing them to give them a little bit more traction and a little bit more contextual meaning. And so we get to the one today on adultery. And if I'm honest with you, I just want to tell you that this subject makes me uncomfortable, mostly from a place of that I've just seen so much hurt, so much woundedness, so much pain that has come from this single activity of adultery. And simultaneously, I have seen God do some of his most miraculous redemptive work around this particular issue. And so I think it's complicated. I don't think there's an easy answer. And so what I want to say to you, if you're hearing this morning, is that nothing that I say today is intended to be hurtful. It is intended to be a reflection of what Jesus is calling us to, right? That we know that Jesus, there's a moratorium against adultery. It says in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery. There is this sense of Jesus affirming what the Old Testament has said. But more importantly for us in the culture we're living in today is to understand why. And so what we know about Jesus' teaching is that this is intended to be a guardrail for your personal life. But more than just personal morality, it is intended to reflect a community attitude. So we know in the day of Jesus that polygamy, having many, many wives, and adultery, this was commonplace. We think we're living in a sex-saturated society today. I'm telling you, in the first century in Rome, it was far, far worse than what we're living in today. Although there is a slippery slope that we're on for sure as a culture. So Jesus gives us this moratorium. So let me read to you from Matthew chapter 5, beginning at verse 27. He says, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell." Again, it just feels like Jesus has got a bit of an overcorrection here, right? It just feels like in our culture, in our society, this just sounds like extreme. But is it? I mean, what Jesus is saying is that you should eliminate anything that would cause you to stumble, right? So if lust is your problem, you should cut it off. If stealing is your problem, you should cut it off. So he's going to the extreme here in order to make his point that we are to be set apart, that we are to be our community examples of how to live life and how to do it. I think historically the church has had two responses to this issue of adultery. It has either been one of accommodation or condemnation. One where we just look the other way, we just pretend like it doesn't exist, or we do condemnation, where we just cast people out. We just put a scarlet letter on them, and then they're done for the rest of eternity. I'm just here to argue this morning that neither one of these approaches is working. That what Jesus is calling us to is the response he had to the woman who was caught in adultery, when he said to her at the end, "Woman, go and sin no more." But I think when we look at this passage, it's important for us to understand that Jesus wants us to live a life where we don't have to have the guardrails, where we don't have to hear the words, "You should not lust," right? So hate that causes murder, lust that leads to inappropriate relationships, these are choices that begin in our hearts. And so Jesus is saying, you want to catch that first, because it would be better for you to eliminate a body part, he said, than for you to be trapped in the sin of what your heart causes you to do. So church, again, this is really, really hard teaching, and I am not trying to make any excuses for anybody who has ever struggled or stumbled or had this problem. But I do want you to know that Jesus is a redeeming God who can redeem all situations and can redeem people's personal lives from the woundedness and the hurt that comes from adultery. But Jesus is saying, live a life so that you're an example to your community, Have great marriages. Be good fathers and good mothers. See these moratoriums, these commands, these laws, see them as guardrails. But then Jesus wants you to pull the guardrails up. He doesn't want us to just be better drivers. He wants us to be great drivers. He wants us to be able to anticipate the problems in our culture and then make the adjustments. So church, we live in a hypersexualized world. We live in a place where lust reigns all over the place. Jesus says, keep that in check. Check your heart. Make sure it doesn't lead you to a place of which ultimate destruction happens. Church, I know this is challenging and complicated teaching. Just know how much I love you and how much I believe that God is working through all of us to redeem his community so that we can be a shining example to others. I look forward to being with you next week. We have another challenging subject to conquer then. God bless you and have a great day.